We will now call the Planning Commission meeting of June 13th, 2023 to order. Roll call. Kava Chair.
Oldani here.
Seifert here.
Lorick here.
Okay. That'll get us to the approval of minutes of May 23rd, 2023. If everybody takes a few moments to take a look if you haven't already. And whenever you're satisfied, there's no discussions, errors, omissions, corrections.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of May 23rd, 2023.
Lorick seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Dawn.
Grillo, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kavich, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And that'll get us to a review and discussion of recent Common Council actions. Carrie?
Council approved the following: an ordinance approving a conditional use permit for vehicle rentals on the property at 1155 West Anderson Court, and a resolution approving a certified survey map submitted by Jason Akilski, St. John Properties, Inc., on behalf of East Rawson Avenue LLC for the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Item 5 is review and discuss the report from the Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal Actions. There were currently none. And item 6 is review and discuss the report on the quarterly Parks and Recreation Commission actions. We will get that report July the 11th, 2023. Which will lead us right into old business. Item 7A, it's plan review of site, building, and related plans for St. John's property at 140 East Rawson Avenue. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a held item at the last meeting. There were several items that have been pointed out in the staff report for the applicant to correct, and they have brought forward plans that address those items. This is for a 48,090 square foot multi-tenant commercial building. This finishes out the development on the property. They have moved the building so that it does now meet setback requirements to that rear lot line. Other items that have been changed include the removal of the parking stalls that were added to the parking area in the loading dock between buildings A and B. They have provided a modification request for Plan Commission consideration of that parking requirement. Loading docks were also reduced in this area, so they are, instead of 10, there will be 5. They are all on the south end, south of that wall, the retaining wall that's in the loading dock currently, and their proposed kind of utility wall in the middle of their proposed A building. Landscape plans were also revised. In the northwest corner, this was to address the transition zone, which is in green on the screen. They also added plantings around the trash enclosure, which is in the orange box. And as far as the utilities are concerned, in the right-of-way along Rawson Avenue that was acquired as part of their certified survey map, they have put some additional plantings in there. Whatever the utilities will allow, the direction is going to be put as many plants as you possibly can, as tall as they'll allow you, essentially. And this is the floor plan that shows the modification. The highlighted areas, the yellow boxes, are showing the locations of the overhead dock doors. This is the south end of the building. The elevations themselves really have changed very little. The west elevation hasn't changed at all. Neither has the north elevation. The east is where we see the change to the loading dock overhead doors. Where there had been overhead doors, they have now become essentially storefronts and regular access doors for humans. No change to the southern elevation either. Color elevations have not changed. We have not received an update, so this is pretty much what the Plan Commission reviewed at the last commission meeting. One other thing to note, we do have a couple of requirements for code compliance that will be as conditions in the suggested motion. With regard to the landscape plans, we will, as always, need heights of plants at installation versus maturity, soil depths for the landscape islands in the parking lot, the proposed fence location, if there is a fence, And also, we need dimensions for the proposed thin brick. We did get dimensions for the entire wall, but not the brick itself. Lighting has also been reduced to 3,000 kelvins maximum in the parking lot to comply with the requirements adjacent to residential. And of course, the signs are still placeholders. We will have a master sign plan in the future. And with that, there is a suggested motion for consideration on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before I go to the commission, is the applicant, do you like to say anything, or you want to wait on questions, sir? Okay, applicant's signaled that he'll wait on the questions. Okay, we'll start right on off. Chauncey, you want to start us tonight? We'll need your name and address, please.
My name's Jason Akilski, address 2000 Pewaukee Road, Suite A in Waukesha. Yeah, we submitted a turning plan with the fire truck that the chief had recommended the size, so I don't know if that was in the, but we did submit a turning radius plan.
Thank you.
Is that it? Okay. Mike, if you want to clarify, you can come on up. I was going to call you at the end, but it seems appropriate time now.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Mike Havey with Fire. We did get a submittal to update for the turning radiuses for our fire department vehicles, and it's acceptable.
Okay. Everything else good?
Yes, water
Sprinklers,
supply.
Hydrants.
Yep, that's all been worked out.
Great, thank you. Okay, Fred?
Okay, I have a question. We're talking about parking. I guess we had a requirement of 192 spaces and we got it down to 184. Is that good with us, Carrie?
The parking modification request allows the Plan Commission to consider a reduction in the required amount of parking if there's shared parking and if there's other criteria that are addressed in the request. If the Plan Commission is comfortable with the amount of parking, that would be within your purview to approve the reduction. Since this is a multi-tenant, multi-building development, shared parking is available, so there is that option. And it's staff's opinion that, like the other buildings with the parking that has been shared, it will be on the landowner to ensure that all the tenants have adequate parking for their needs.
Okay. Do we need to include that in the motion if we make about?
I think it would be something that you would discuss as part of the consideration right now.
Okay.
If anybody has any concerns, now would be the time to raise them. If everybody determines that the parking as proposed is acceptable, I think an approval of the plans is fine because they've been revised to include the 187 stall or 184 stalls.
As long as they can share parking, then I don't see a problem. So I go along with that. Okay.
Okay. I would assume it's shared in a situation such as this. Much like
Right.
it's not a strip mall, but similar.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Don, you're up.
First look, it looks like a lot of conditions, but reading through them, it's all code compliant stuff and pretty standard stuff. So overall, I think I'm pretty happy. The only question I have is on the lighting. Remind me, on the sides with neighbors at the 3,500, who enforces that?
The requirement is for the fixtures to have a maximum color temperature of 3,500 Kelvin, and at the time of application, that would be the time that we would catch it if it did not comply with that.
Okay, that's it for me.
Yeah, it gets submitted with the lighting plan to the city inspector.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Greg?
I have no more questions. As far as the parking modification, I'm okay with the plan as presented.
Ashley? You're up, Dawn.
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Commissioner Hanna, I'm not sure that your microphone is on.
How about now? Okay, good. For the lighting, is it going to be decorative or just a standard lighting?
There are decorative like sconces on the building, but
Okay.
as far as the parking lot lighting, they're pole lights with lenses, and they kind of shine down, and they're screened on the ends to keep it within the lot and not go into the neighbor's yard at all.
So, Carrie, if it's decorative and they need to be replaced for one reason or the other, we just want to make sure it continues to be that. Just in case if one break, they have to replace it in kind so it maintain the same consistency of the look. So I don't know if this is part of that consideration or restriction or no.
Any kind of wall fixture that is attached to the building does have to comply with the code requirements, and they do have kind of, it's not a Kelvin requirement, it's a wattage requirement, because it's considered like wall wash lighting. So if those sconces were to be replaced, and theoretically, they would be replaced, just as a fixture, no, not a fixture, a bulb. Bulb would be fine. That wouldn't need a permit. But if they were to replace the entire fixture, they might need a permit for that, and that would be the time that we would catch it if it doesn't meet the requirements of code.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm up. We had a whole laundry list of things to take care of. I want to thank you for working with staff and getting it to a manageable portion, and a lot of this is standard stuff, so I'm happy with it because you had a lot to shake out there in a short time, so congratulations on that. I'm fine with the parking itself. Fire answered my questions. I was taken on early by the commission. And before we vote, just let the record show Commissioner Hanna did arrive into the meeting for this particular item. So there's no further discussion. Motion.
Oldani moves that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by East Rawson Avenue LLC for a multi-tenant commercial building on the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the certified survey map is approved by the Common Council and recorded prior to submission of permit applications. 3, that the landscape plans are revised to address overhead utilities and meet code requirements. 4, that the masonry and stone building materials on the ground floor base level to a minimum of 3 feet above grade meet the minimum 3-inch thickness requirement per code. 5, that the plans are revised to include locations for all mechanicals, transformers, and utilities, all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building and rooftops shall be screened per code. 6, all light sources shall be full cutoff fixtures with the light source fully shielded and directed downward. Shield shall be on the side facing residential properties. The color temperature of the fixture shall be limited to a maximum of 3,500 kelvins on the northwest and 5,000 kelvins on the remainder of the property. 7, that a detailed master sign plan is reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission prior to submission of sign permit applications. 8, that all revised plans, site building, landscaping, etc., are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Ashley.
Laura Guy.
Bukevich, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye. And aye.
Grillo, aye.
Okay, moving right along. New business, item 8A. Review conditions and restrictions for a conditional use permit for Arch Solar, for rooftop solar panels at Riverwood Arms multifamily residential buildings on the properties at 520 and 557 West Riverwood Drive. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a continuation of the conditional use permit request for a rooftop solar installation on the existing apartment buildings at Riverwood Arms Estates. This will be on 5 of the 6 apartment buildings. The 6th that we have already installed these solar panels on, these panels would match those. They will be on the southernmost sections and they will be mounted flush. Just a review of where those buildings are located. They are on both sides of Riverwood Drive in these locations. And the building with the existing arrays gives you an idea of what that would look like. As far as the conditions and restrictions are concerned, because this is part of a PUD, all requirements of Ordinance 1141, these conditions and restrictions and all Plan Commission approvals remain in effect. Under Section 3, uses allowed on the property shall be limited to those allowed by the RM1 district. These conditions and restrictions, Ordinance 1141, all Plan Commission approvals, and all applicable sections of the municipal code. Solar energy collection systems shall be limited to rooftop-mounted systems. They shall not extend beyond 12 inches parallel to the roof surface and shall not extend above the highest peak of a pitched roof. Height is measured from the roof surface on which the surface system is mounted to the highest edge of the system. All materials used for racking mounts, mounting clamps, and flashings shall be of color consistent with the color of the roof surface to minimize visibility. And all plans need to include details for emergency shutoffs per fire department requirements. The next few sections for parking, lighting, bulk, and dimensional requirements are per approvals on file, including ordinances and all applicable sections of code. And with that, there is a suggested motion for Plan Commission consideration on the screen. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Would the applicant like to say anything or wait upon questions? Sir, you'll have to be
sorry.
name and address.
Yep,
and you gotta
sorry.
be on the mic.
Andrew Holmstrom, 1045 West Calumet Road, River Hills, Wisconsin. So last time we had talked about the PV disconnect location means, so I just brought some examples of what's going to be clearly identified for you guys if in the event of a fire at the buildings. So we've got these two. This one's per NEC code. This one's an additional one. Just for further, and this is only part of the labels that are required by the NEC code, but we've also got the warning labels, which will be every 3 feet on the conduit from the rooftop location down to the disconnect, and then the PV, the fire protection devices, basically rapid shutdown. This will be clearly identified where to turn that off on all the systems as well.
Okay. Mike, you want to come on up? You got any issues with this? It probably meets NEC code, but does it meet your qualifications? That's what the important thing, right?
Good evening again, Mike Hay with Fire. So we met previously, and just to kind of go over some of the NFPA requirements for the solar panels and for emergency shutdowns and access. So we just want to make sure that we have the right information for our crews and first responders because of the energy that's being stored, and that we want to make sure that not only for us but also for the residents there that if there's any issues, we're familiar with the systems.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the commission. Christine?
I have nothing, thank you.
Dawn?
No questions.
Ashley? Greg?
I have no concerns. I just have a question for the applicant, more out of curiosity. With these being on top of buildings that are somewhat in close proximity, are they at all reflective? Is there any time during the day that the sun may reflect off of this right into a window of a neighboring building?
No.
Okay.
Nope. So they have a non-reflective coating on them with the goal of absorbing as much sunlight as possible. The only condition that I've found where you can get it is if you like have a drone and you kind of traverse around and you can find like a sweet spot right where the sun is. But
Okay.
you got to try pretty hard.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. Don?
No questions right now.
Fred?
No questions.
Chauncey?
I do have a question. So for the solar panels, what's the lifespan of these panels?
They're warranted for 30 years.
30 years, okay. And Carrie, I have a question about the expiration date or the expiration for these conditions and restrictions. We have 12 months. Should it be longer?
There should be no expiration date on this particular conditional use permit.
Oh, it shouldn't be? Oh,
The
okay.
time of compliance is for them to actually institute or install the solar panels, but there is no expiration date.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hang on, just real quick. I do have a question, just out of curiosity. with an external power source coming in, not We Energy is derived, for safety of the fire department, how do they mark the disconnecting means to de-energize that so they don't get into an energized situation? Just that sticker?
Yep, and then it's also located on the plot plans, which are included in a plastic weatherproof tube at each system.
Okay. Okay. Almost seems like, much like a fire alarm system, it would be almost color coded, to tell you the truth. But that's up to the state. So, okay, just curious.
Sure.
Actually, now I have another question since you instigated that. Does We Energy have any knowledge of this? Are they associated with this whatsoever?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We have to go through an interconnection approval process, submit one-line diagrams, certificates of insurance showing them as additionally insured. And then, we meet out there with one of their applications engineers, and to give the official approval or the thumbs up to operate, they have to come out and do a commissioning of the system where they're essentially simulating a condition if the grid were to lose power to ensure that the inverter, the converting device for the solar panels, shuts off within 2 microseconds as a safety feature to protect utility linemen.
Okay. So they are cooperating or working
Yeah, so
together?
that was a long-winded answer, but yes, they're aware.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And everybody will be fully licensed with the state installing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because we're having issues with that throughout installations.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
okay. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, motion?
Seifert moves that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council adopt the conditions and restrictions as part of a conditional use permit allowing roof-mounted solar energy collection systems on the apartment buildings on the properties at 520 and 557 West Riverwood Drive.
Lorik seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Greg.
Lorik, aye.
Bekavich, aye.
Ladani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Hannah, aye.
Okay, good luck, thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
That'll get us to item 8B, and that is review a request by Christopher Fink for a conditional use permit for general office use on the property at 7101 and 7115 South Pennsylvania Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was actually an item that was sort of held from the last Plan Commission agenda. So this is a request for a conditional use permit for general office. It's within an existing residential building on a B2 property. So this is kind of like a reuse of a property that has been zoned for commercial. General office use is considered a conditional use in that district, and that's basically allowing for the first floor of the building as an office, as a meeting room, and for a restroom for workers of this business. There was a CSM that was approved to combine the two properties, and that was approved by the council on May 2nd, and this is directly related to the plan review in the next agenda item. On the screen right now is the proposed site plan that will be part of the next review. The apartment will be on the second floor of the existing home. There will be up to 4 employees on site, including the applicant, at any time between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., and up to 6 vehicles associated with the business would be on site. No customers would be going to this site. This is all part of a business that has the product delivered directly to the customer. And there's no outdoor storage that has been requested, nor would any be approved or recommended for approval. Minimum parking requirements for the B2 district for general office, 1 for every 300 square feet, which would be 2 for the business, and 1 enclosed for the apartment, which would be a maximum of 3 that would be allowed per code. The request is for 6. They do have up to 6 vehicles, so that would be a consideration that the Plan Commission would have to directly make a decision on. And as far as the outdoor storage is concerned, There was one area that was identified on the proposed site plan with a label that said carts. We don't have an explanation for that, but we just want to reiterate there is no outdoor storage that is recommended for approval with this particular application. There is a suggested motion on the screen. Please note that there is a typo in the previous report. The next meeting will be June 27th if this is recommended for approval to discuss conditions and restrictions. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Before we start, the applicant like to say anything? Yep, come on up, sir.
Heinen, 14170 West Greenfield Avenue in Brookfield. And I guess my only comment or question is with regards to conditions and restrictions. I guess reviewing the report, it does look as though that's in reference to the conditions under item 8C, but it's not clear to me.
Conditions and restrictions are the second part of a conditional use permit application process, so the conditions are specific to the permit. The plan review is separate. Those conditions are related specifically to the review of the site and building plan, site and building plans for the proposal.
So we're in approval of this. So.
What's that? I didn't hear.
Yeah,
you.
we're happy with the motion that's being suggested. So.
For the conditional use permit.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Chauncey, you want to start us off?
Commissioner Chandler, yeah.
There we go. Thank you. I do have some questions for the applicant. Okay, can you share some details in regards to, I guess we'll start with the life safety plan. We noticed feedback about it, that you're looking to connect with someone to get that information. Just wanted to follow up on that one.
Yeah, my understanding is that's with regards to the site review, but we are trying to find a architect to be able to produce that. We've talked with the city and with the staff and with the fire department chief, who directed us to contacting a private architect because we're kind of doing it after the fact approval here. We're not hiring an architect separately, and we're struggling to find an architect willing to prepare what we need to propose to the fire department.
Okay. And then could you also provide feedback in regards to, I believe Carrie said there was a sign or something that's on the property for carts?
Yeah, there's no carts. I don't know what she's necessarily referring to, but we're not asking for any approval of the carts or outdoor storage. So that's fine with us. Yeah.
So Carrie, is that sufficient information? Did that answer your question per our notes?
There we go. Mike wasn't working with me. My guess is that it was a typo on the site plan, so that'll be a condition of approval that it gets removed. But the specific conditions and restrictions for the conditional use permit will not allow for outdoor storage, so that it'll be caught.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then another question in regards to the trash enclosure. Can you provide any feedback about those modifications as well?
Yeah, so I was going to bring this up with the site plan review, but my client's now thinking of removing the trash completely rather than doing the masonry work that the city is asking.
And Carrie, is that acceptable?
There we go. We'll talk about it at the site and building plan review in the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Fred?
No questions.
Don?
The only question I have is, since this is for the conditional use permit, this is for a painting contractor, is that correct? So was everything talked about as far as any kind of storage of flammables and that sort of thing?
That was discussed, and that's why there is no outdoor storage that is being recommended as part of this conditional use permit. It's our understanding that the operation of the business is such that they will not be storing anything at the location because it is all ordered and delivered to the client's locations.
Okay, the job site. Okay. All right, no other questions.
Okay, Greg?
No concerns on the conditions and restrictions, or the conditional use permit, sorry.
Okay, Ashley?
No questions.
Dawn?
Nothing for me.
Christine?
Nothing here. Thank you.
So you were operating a business there, you're finally coming into compliance with what the city is asking for, conditional use, that's the purpose of it. Okay. Assistant Chief Havey, can you come on up here and kind of just give me an assessment of what you found with this? It's storage, I mean, we have a one-car garage and we won't have any hazardous in there. It's a painting contractor, we're not gonna have any chemical there.
Yeah, I can't speak for that because we haven't inspected this yet because it's not an inspectable property. We're just getting, this is recognized now.
Yeah.
So we don't know the conditions of the structures because it's a residential, and we have no scope of authority to inspect on residential. So as we move forward, that's the direction is there is some storage limits or some, if they have containers or shelving units that are enclosed that they can store combustible, but they have to meet the code requirements for the space allotted. So we just have to have assessment of that, and it's typically done in the permitting process as well.
Okay, so with conditional use permit, you'll start doing regular fire inspections.
Then once it becomes a business address, then we will conform to and conduct fire inspections for code.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. No, it's just conditional use, so good with that one. We'll take it up in the next part of it. If there's no further discussions or questions, motion please on 8B.
Lorick moves to recommend that the Common Council approve a conditional use permit allowing a general office use on the property at 7101 and 7115 South Pennsylvania Avenue after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Plan Commission's review at the next meeting.
Seipert seconds.
Roll call. Kavich, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Grillo, aye. Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
And 8C, plan review and related sites submitted by Christopher Fink for the trash enclosure, parking lot expansion, and landscape on the property 7101 and 7115 South Pennsylvania Avenue. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So staying with this property, we are talking about the site modifications that are being asked for approval after the fact. So we do have a trash enclosure, we do have a parking lot expansion, landscaping, and this is all related to the CSM and the conditional use permit application. So on the screen right now is the site plan that shows both post-development and additional to be installed in the with regard to rain gardens and the removal of some concrete pavement over on the west side of the property. You'll see that in the hatch marks. In red is the expansion of the asphalt pavement. There's a little bit more that's outside of the red area, but that's the main part of it. Some of that is for access and parking. The access off of Rawson Avenue was actually approved after the fact, but it was approved by Milwaukee County. We do have a copy of that permit. As far as the parking is concerned, there is a setback requirement, and unfortunately, the last stall does not meet that setback requirement. And that's on the corner, kind of where the Rawson Avenue turns into Pennsylvania Avenue. So the recommendation would be to eliminate one parking stall or to move it and remove the asphalt so that it meets setback requirements. That would also have to comply with the requirements for landscaping and screening, which at this point, the landscape plan is incomplete, so we are unable to recommend approval of it. The wood fence for the trash enclosure, we've heard, will be removed, and just want to let everybody know that since this is no longer a residential property, if it's removed, the trash collection would have to be private. So we would not be, as the city, collecting any kind of rolling bins. Just for everybody's clarification, if the dumpster enclosure is to be constructed or reconstructed, it would have to conform to code requirements, which does require masonry, brick, those kinds of materials. We don't allow wood. We don't allow wood composite because those are combustible materials, and we have seen trash enclosure fires before utilizing those materials, so they are no longer allowed. We've already talked about the carts. There is an identifier on here on the northwest corner of the property. There's a 4-foot tall wood fence, and in there is the identifier for carts. We have discussed that, so that label should be removed. No outdoor storage will be allowed on the property. We have not received any lighting plans, so it's unclear as to whether or not this property would need lighting plans. If there are going to be lights installed, we will need a plan to be submitted for approval by the electrical inspector. While we have received a sign graphic for the existing sign on the north side of the building, we do not have dimensions, and it does not appear that the graphic we received actually matches with the sign that was installed on the side of the building. So we will need those dimensions, we will need all those details before we can even review an application for a sign permit. As we discussed, the fire department will require a life safety plan, after which they can conduct their inspection of the property, and this property can be given occupancy for the office use of the property. And while staff does support the redevelopment in conformance with code and complete plans, at this point, we do not have enough information in order to recommend an approval. On the screen right now is a proposed landscape plan that will need to be revised per the recommended conditions should this move forward. And there is a suggested motion in 3 parts. However, staff does recommend holding this. 1, to allow the conditional use permit process to complete, and 2, for those remaining items to be submitted so that we can recommend an approval in conformance with code requirements. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Regarding this one, does the applicant want to wait on questions, or do you want to make a statement?
Again, Jason Heinen, 14170 West Greenfield Avenue. I'd just like to express my client's immense frustration with this whole process. I've assisted clients with other municipalities, and this has been one of the more straining and difficult ones. We've been working and speaking with Carrie since last fall, since my client approached me about the violations and citations he's received, and trying to seek what we need to provide the city to be able to satisfy and correct the violations. And it feels as though every time we've submitted what they're requesting, there's further additional requests. Even just now, I'm just hearing that one of the parking spaces is within the setback. I'm hearing that there's other things that she pointed out that that is completely new to me. Commissioners, this property is zoned commercial. It has been zoned commercial. It was zoned commercial prior to my client's purchase. It is not a residential parcel. It's not a park. My client has recognized.
Does someone live in the building currently?
He is, yes.
And why is he living in a commercial building? Okay, let's just cut right to the chase here, okay? You're frustrated, we're frustrated. You ran an illegal business per our code out of that building for years. We're trying to correct it to our code. We can move on with the process.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that candor. That's the candor I appreciate, really.
Well, good,
because
I'm glad.
we've sensed it. We've sensed the city's frustration, and we really are trying to correct it.
Well, good, and I guess you got mine
So-
too, because we just want this done per process. If he'd have come in here in the first place, we probably wouldn't be at this point today.
He recognizes that. But I guess what I would ask, my fear is, and what I'd ask you as the planning commission is, see my client's interest. He's standing here. He's interested in correcting this. Don't use this as an opportunity to further punish him for not having come to you beforehand.
We're not punishing. We're just going to ask for what's admissible to our code. That's all.
We get that.
We ask that of any business.
Yep. So my client recognizes and approves. He hasn't asked for, he didn't come before you before doing a lot of this work. He's put a lot of work into this property. He purchased the property for $195,000. He's invested $285,000 into improving the property. He's spent numerous amounts of money now in legal fees since having to deal with the violations and addressing the requests. His sole interest has been in residing in the property and using the lower level as an office in his painting business. He has a number of vehicles that he uses in the business, so the additional parking lot space is helpful for what he's trying to do. He's substantially cleaned up the yard, improved the house, and put a new fence around the trash. Again, we can remove that if that's what the city wants, vastly improving the overall appearance of the property. In the process of cleaning up the property, he found dead deer carcasses and numerous old cinder blocks and immense amounts of trash and waste materials from the shop that was on the northern lot. He's expressed an openness to the city staff to suggestions on correcting the violations, but with each offering of corrections, it seems further issues are raised and more time and money is demanded. So our concern, and I guess the crux of the matter with what is in the staff's recommendations is that this is further putting the hold on what we're seeking and further opportunity for them to add additional conditions when we don't have a comprehensive list of what it is the city wants.
Well, it's my understanding we don't have complete plans, so we really can't approve speculative plans that we don't have.
Again, what we've submitted, we were asked for, and that's what we're trying to comply with. Now it seems we're being told what we're submitting is not enough, I guess. Which is it?
Well, whether it's not enough or it's not correct is the judgment, not the judgment, but what our planning staff and our zoning staff goes through to make sure it's compliant with what our ordinances are. So if it ain't up to snuff, I'm sure they're going to tell you, this is what you need to do, these are your choices, and you go from there. You know, you can take trash enclosure. Gary made it very clear, it'll be a business, we will not pick up a cart. As a business, you cannot use our city dump either. Businesses aren't allowed in the city dump, so you're going to have to figure out how to get rid of the trash of the business. The residents, something different. But that's just one example. Landscape plan is another example. You know, we have setbacks that have to be met. We ask that of any business. We're not singling you out. We just want it done per the process, per our ordinance. So we can work through this.
We recognize we need to comply with the code. That is what we're seeking to do.
Okay.
All I'm expressing to you is and I recognize clearly the city's been frustrated as well. We are frustrated with the process and the staff. We've been trying to work with them, and this has been a very difficult process.
Yeah, rules hurt sometimes.
It's not the rules that we have a problem with. It's the convoluted way in which we've been kind of further explained additional rules each time we go back.
Okay, it's been, I don't know what your experience is. My staff is pretty straightforward. I don't find them very convoluted. I don't appreciate that. Maybe the whole process going backwards on it has been convoluted and complicated things. So I'll leave it at that. We're going to go to.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
My name's Christopher Fink. Obviously, I live at 7115 South Pennsylvania Avenue. When I bought this property originally, and it was explained to me like by a realtor, which maybe is someone that I should not have listened to, that it was zone B2 to where I could do something like I was doing. Right? When I got there, I decided to clean the place up. I put a lot of money into it. And then I got violations, and there was a ticket of like $3,000 and some odd dollars that I could have just paid. But what I decided to do was to try to fix the problems that were there.
Appreciate that.
And I ended up spending another $40,000 on landscaping and stuff like that. I mean, in my defense, I'll be honest with you, first-time homeowner. It's the first house I've ever owned, and I had no idea that maybe I was going against the grain on this one. I did have some builders that were working with me at the very beginning of this process that ended up backing out due to the fact that when they did try to contact the powers that be to get some answers and whatnot, I have builders that have been building commercial properties for 20, 30 years. They decided that they didn't want nothing to do with this particular product.
Was it your project or our process, and were they permitting?
I don't. Of course, they were permitting. I would never do anything.
If they're reputable builders, they should know the code.
Yeah, it was Michael Thomas Development's very, very reputable. And long story short is I put a lot of money into this property trying to make it better. You know, obviously I do a lot of painting estimates in I'd say 100 homes since I've lived there. And every thing that I've ever heard from anybody is how much I cleaned that corner up in comparison to what it was 2 years ago. So I think my main thing that I want to kind of put in moving forward is the money that I've spent on this, whether it was the right money or the wrong money, it's been spent. And with the suggested kind of landscaping that's been offered to do per codes and whatnot, I got some estimates on that. It's like another $75,000, which quite honestly, I mean, it is a lot of money to spend on that area again.
Agreed.
Huh?
I agree.
Right. So, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to state my point of, you know, the money that I've put into it versus the money I have left to put into this. And honestly, I don't have another $75,000 to put into this
I
property.
get it. That's why we go through the process and see where we're at.
Okay.
You know, we don't want to just start at a hard no.
Right.
So, I mean, we'll go through the process.
And we'll,
Commissioners will look at it.
that being said, is that we did have, like, what was the other, and we dialed it back a little bit. We had to dial it back because I got an estimate from Hill and Valley Landscaping, and they came out and did the initial per all of the codes and everything that were brought back to us, and that's where I got this $75,000, and that was without the fence that they're asking to have us build around the property. So it's probably closer to $90,000. So I dialed it back to what I could afford, and that's what we've submitted to you.
Okay. Well, it's up to the commission to decide what's acceptable on that. So,
Okay.
but again, per our ordinance and our setbacks and our screening, that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
So, we'll see where it goes with the commission.
Thank you.
Okay. Start us out on this one. Chelsea, how about you?
Okay, I do have a question for the applicant and I think partially Carrie. So bear with me, because I think what I am hearing is that the applicant, am I correct, you're looking for a list of things to do? What exactly are you looking for?
It would be helpful to have an exhaustive list of the conditions that we need to meet to get approval for what's already been done. For example, one of the items earlier on was providing a grading report. We already did the work. Now, I get that that's something you would request of someone proposing work. We can't go back and explain what the grading was. The engineers were telling us that's just not something we can do. And so it'd just be helpful to have that exhaustive list of conditions.
Just to be clear, that grading plan is for water runoff and where it's all going to flow. It's not what you did now, it's what it should be. Am I correct in that, Carrie?
I would defer to Commissioner Kupczynski.
Yes, we would want verification that whatever work has been done drains properly, it meets the intent of the surrounding area, that anything that would have been done isn't impacting other neighbors negatively at all, just to see what was changed. I know, as Carrie mentioned, green infrastructure was required, which that has been submitted, so engineering will complete our final review on that once the plan has been approved.
Okay. Chauncey, you still have the floor.
Okay, and so that leads me to a question to Carrie. If I'm understanding you correctly also, this report that we have is based on what is needed from what you already have. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. The suggested
Okay.
motion that includes conditions of approval is based on the review of the plans that have been submitted. And it's a code review. So these are the things that are being recommended, so we have code compliance.
Okay. So then for the applicant, I guess, do you have questions about the report that we're seeing, which gives a list of everything that is needed or may have been missing on the information that you submitted, your plans and all?
Well, for most of it, no.
Oh, okay.
Some of it is fairly open-ended in general. And I recognize like 12, I'm okay with, right? And the last one you guys just approved, that was in there. But, you know, that all required building, fence, paving, green infrastructure, sign, and required related permits are obtained prior to any further development or occupancy. That's kind of a laundry list of permits that you're seeking.
Well, yeah, we always require permits before you start building, not
I,
after
I,
the fact.
I get that.
That's what leads us to problems of
I'm just
spending
answering the
money that's
question, which is to say-
unnecessary or wrong.
There is some generality there that we may have questions about, but for the most part, I have no problem with the list. We'll try to comply with it. Where my hesitation arises is just past experience in trying to find out from staff what it is they actually want, and kind of just being it fed piecemeal.
I guess I'm just pausing because I'm trying to put the pieces together of what you want versus what we have. And there seems to be, I don't know if it's a
Well,
gap.
what
or
we
if-
need
Thank
to
you.
correct it
That would help me.
are
Okay.
conditions 1 through
1
12.
through 12, okay.
That's what we need.
That's what we need.
That's what we
Okay.
need. Okay? And you can work with our staff, they can lead you in a direction. It's not their job to design it for you. It's their job to tell you what we need. From there, you get an architect or whatever you do, and you bring it forward. Some of this is probably working through it with staff, but it's not their job to design it for you.
So does that help some to understand kind of what's needed?
Yes.
Okay. And so I have more questions on the space. However, it seems like there are, like the parking requirements, you already discussed landscaping. It sounds like those are things you all will address later and maybe get back to us, or do you have feedback about those things now?
Well, I think I just reiterate my
Oh,
client's
okay.
feedback around the landscaping, that he's already put significant amount of money into this. And that's where the trash enclosure comes from, right? A wood structure obviously doesn't cost as much as a masonry structure. He understands the safety aspects of it. And so it's bound, you know, my client doesn't have endless pockets. Even though he's paying me to be here, he does not have endless pockets. And he doesn't want to keep shelling out money for some of these things are very expensive. And so you'll have to weigh, is it worth him for us to do a masonry structure, or do we just not do a trash enclosure at all?
Quick question about the trash, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that if there is an apartment there, you're saying that you won't pick up trash cans?
And, you know, I could be wrong with this, and I know our maybe zoning could help me on this one. The residential portion would have supplied garbage cans where we'd come and do a pickup. We do not pick up for a business. There you need an enclosure, and businesses are not allowed to use a city dump. They have to privately contract their garbage pickup. So
So the dumpster that is there is through a dumpster service, so you
Right now.
don't pick that up anyway.
we don't pick it up. You contract to pick that up, but we want that dumpster enclosed. And a few years ago, we had a dumpster fire. You know, it happens, as Carrie stated. And we went to all masonry because they burn down, whether they're engineered wood or wood, they can burn down, put it that way. So that's why the dumpsters are mandatory masonry these days.
No more questions for me. Thank
Okay.
you.
Fred?
I guess the question I have is, what items of these 12 do you disagree with?
Well, 7, because of the trash enclosure. I think I would,
Okay,
you know, it's a question of whether we're actually going to move forward with doing the masonry structure. I think you could reword it such that it would require removal of the wood fence, but not necessitate replacement of the masonry structure. such a way that if there's no structure, he's not allowed to do a dumpster and that kind of thing. 9, 10, and 11 were the other items that we had concern with. The life safety plan, like we said in conversation with staff, we're just not finding an architect to produce it. We can submit a drawn building schematic, but I don't know what further to do there. Jumping back to 9, I did provide dimensions of the sign to Carrie. I guess if she wants the dimensions in the graphic we provided, that would be helpful to know. But I've provided the dimensions. I felt like I've provided the materials. It is different than the sign that's up there because we tried to comply with the code by keeping it to the size that it needs to be in accordance with the code. And then I've already commented on 11. We're not doing any further building, so to apply for a building permit, I don't know if you do an after-the-fact building permit. We're not wanting to put a fence up, and the neighbor's not wanting to put a fence up. But the city wants us to put a 4-foot fence up, which costs my client money, so we're wondering why that's necessitated. We're not doing any paving. We can get approval, I guess, if there's after-the-fact stuff for this. We recognize the green infrastructure, we recognize the environmental, the landscaping, but we don't want to spend that kind of money on it.
And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about how much I have spent on this property versus the, piece of paper that was up there earlier on what I could kind of afford versus what was recommended on a different, what was that called? Where it's the overlay of the land. The site plan. There was a site plan that, we had, and I got an estimate on it, and it was very, $75,000 to $90,000. So I went back to Hill and Valley and discussed with them what I could afford and what could we do to accommodate you guys. And that is where I'm at with this. So the most recent thing that we've submitted to you is basically what I have the ability to afford, and it comes out to about $25,000 to $30,000 more than I've already spent.
I get the whole cost of it. I understand that, and I feel sorry for you. But again, this sounds heartless. We don't base it on the economics of the cost. We have standards within the city. If we didn't have it, we'd be a shanty town because everybody'd plead poverty and do as little as possible. And then where would we be?
And then, and I completely understand that, but
My apologies to anybody in shanty town.
If that, with that being said, sir, if I can't afford it, I can't afford it. I don't want to come up here and tell you, hey, well, yeah, sure, we'll do all this, and then it never happens, and I'm getting more sick.
I understand that. But again, it's our job to try to get any business in compliance, without a doubt, and that's what we're shooting for here.
Would you guys rather I just not did it there?
No, we don't want to see you out of business, but if you found it cheaper to go into an industrial park and rent a space or buy a building, it may be more advantageous than that corner. That's up to you. We're trying to work through this to make the business work at that location.
Right.
As long as it meets our codes and ordinances. That's what we're trying to do here.
So what if we were just to keep it a residential space?
If you kept it a residential property, you could keep it a residential property. Well, no, you're B4 now, right?
B2.
B2. So
It was B2 when I bought it, to
it
move
was
into it.
B2 when you bought it. Can you have residents in a B2 up above?
This was one of those properties that was turned over. So in other words, it was rezoned to a commercial property in anticipation of it becoming a commercial property.
It was.
Yes.
Okay.
I bought it
But
as
it
a
was not,
residence.
Mr. Fink did not ask for this to be rezoned. He did purchase it as it was zoned
Oh.
in B2.
Okay. So if he wanted to turn it back to a residential property, he'd just rezone it to
Have to change
RS2.
the comprehensive plan first. Comprehensive plan calls for it to be commercial. And then it would have to go through a rezone. And he would not be allowed to do a home-based business there as a painting contractor.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you see, I mean, and that's where I bought a residence thinking that I was gonna live there and, you know, run a small company out of it, and there's all this gray area, and that's why,
Well-
at least for me, it's gray area.
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, it's water under the bridge, but it would have been really advantageous to come in and talk to staff and explain what your objectives were, and what was allowed, and
Like I said,
how to work through it in the first place. It's hard to work back on it.
right, and exactly, and you know,
So-
here we stand, and like I said, first time homeowner, first time I ever bought any property in Oak Creek,
Yeah. Okay,
and it's the first time I've spent almost $500,000 on a piece of property and been told that
understood,
you did everything wrong.
understood. Man, Jossie, no, Fred had the floor. Lost track there. Anyways. Okay, Fred, you still got it.
I still have it.
Yeah, you still got it. You want it? No, I know we were talking about 11. Talking about permitting, and I jumped in on it, on why we do it. Prior.
Terry, is it possible to sit down with our applicant and again go through the items that we're having a problem with and see if they can be resolved?
Yes, and I can say that there has been correspondence back and forth about what the requirements have been, and we have been trying to get the information that we have been requesting as part of this, and no problem going through it again, but
But you
as far
have-
as the suggested motion is considered, those conditions came out of the review of the plans that were submitted, so these are the things that we are requiring.
So what you're saying is you've already sat down with the client.
We have provided letters, and we have provided emails, and I've had phone calls, and we've kind of gone through back and forth with things that have been submitted. But I understand this isn't necessarily something that, if you don't work with it every day, you don't necessarily understand it. This is where we are right now, and these are the things that are going to be required. We can go through, we can sit down and talk about these some more, but these are the things that we have been requiring.
I didn't know that you sat down and discussed it.
Well,
It was
we didn't
email.
sit down in person. We
Okay.
had letters, we had email correspondence, and we've had
Okay.
phone calls. I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, it may be advantageous, but we'll let each commissioner kind of just weigh in shortly as to where we're at.
So we have basically 4 items that they do not agree with.
Oh, I think there's other ones as well
Well-
that are in non-compliance that they got to get straight. All 12 they got to
Well,
meet.
yeah, there's all 12, but I'm sure there are a few of them they have no problem with.
I would think, but it's nice. It's much like the last property we did at St. John's, where he came in with 16 or 17, and he broke it down to 7 or 8 tonight. So,
Right.
which most of these are standard. Item
I'm not-
12.
Yeah, but I asked him what items did he really disagree with, and he had 4 items, 7,
7,
9,
9,
10,
11.
and 11.
Yeah, we have no problems absolutely with 1 through 5 and 12. And we've already commented on the landscaping under 6 and the 4-foot tall fence. Again, the neighbor's not asking for it, we're not asking for it. If the city wants it, I guess my client will have to decide whether he wants
Okay.
the property because he can't put in a fence.
Okay, we got a ways to go. So,
Passing the baton.
all right, Don.
So number 11, I mean, that is basic stuff. And let's put it this way. I would suggest, you're an attorney, correct?
Yep.
Like a real estate attorney?
Yep.
Or, okay. So, I mean, do you deal with developments much, that kind of thing? So,
I recognize it's basic stuff. What I'm asking though is not, again, I don't have a problem with like green infrastructure, but we're not doing any building.
well,
Not
that's
wanting to do
beside
the
the point if
fence.
you're building or not. When you start with the last thing first, and now you're trying to do the first thing last, it's going to not only cost you what the initial expense is going to be, it's going to cost you 2, 3, 4 times as much. And I hate to be callous, that's not our problem. And we've had everybody that's ever come through here in the years I've been here, and there's people on here who've been here for years and years and years. Nobody that I remember has come through and say, like, I don't understand why I have to do all this stuff because I don't have the money. You did it wrong, and we're here to see that it's done right. And that's the crux of it all. Crying poverty and ignorance is not going to help as far as I'm concerned. And I hate to be brutally honest, because everybody else had to do it the right way when they came through here. Everybody. And sometimes they did their research and said, you know what, we can't do this in Oak Creek, or, well, this is more expensive than I thought. And they backed off and they didn't lose a bunch of money. That's not the way it was done here. And as far as I can see it, we have to stick to the way we've always done it. And all these rules and all these zonings and all these codes are in place for a reason. And as far as I can see it, that's the way it's going to stay. And clearly this is going to be a hold, so there's no reason to go on and on about this. So I will now pass the baton myself.
Greg?
So I guess, first off, please don't misunderstand my support of staff's decision as disapproval of this project. I appreciate the work that you've done so far. Just looking at the before and after photos that were submitted, it's clear that you've really improved the property. And I appreciate you continuing to work with staff to bring it into compliance. I am not one to ever bring up any type of variance or attempt at a variance. But in this case, I almost feel that if there is anything that you could try to get a variance for while providing other options, I would suggest maybe trying that. But definitely try to come into compliance first thing. The other issue I get that gets brought up very often on corners such as this. This is the entrance to Oak Creek. I mean, this is the Rawson Avenue coming right from South Milwaukee into Oak Creek. So obviously we don't want to stray too far from what our code requires. I mean, there's a certain aspect to beautifying that property, and clearly you've done a lot of work so far. But as the mayor said, another item on the agenda today we held just because all the back and forth that's happening right now, we don't like to engineer these while we're here at the meeting and go through item by item what needs to be done. So if it goes that route and it ends up being held, please don't misunderstand that as a denial. So thank you.
All right, Ashley.
I don't have anything further from engineering other than what was discussed. I guess just to touch on the paving permit, like, yes, it's understood that it's been put in already, but the city does keep track of all the impervious pavement that went down, so it is more of a record-keeping thing, so it is good to have that information. So that's one of the reasons why some of these permits are still required to be submitted, more or less for a record-keeping purposes as well.
Thank you for that clarification. Dawn?
Yeah, I drive past this often. I was a little sad to see all the trees gone, but I knew when I saw the sign on the side of the building, I think we gave Amazon a smaller sign than this. This is huge, and I knew it was not going to, that it must not be up to code. So, yeah, that was just my comment about the signage. I'm sure it'll have to be much smaller than what you have now.
Christine?
The last one, I guess. Excuse me. So I heard a lot, and I understand how much money you have put in that business. And it hurts a lot that that much money has been spent on that type of business. I personally believe that there's always a middle way. There is always a way to work this out. But also, I believe that codes has to be followed. There is no way out of it, because I agree with the mayor and others that we have to uphold everyone to this. Otherwise, which every building, every business, every residential will have their own thing, and it's just going to be a crazy town here. My recommendation, and it's up to everyone just to weigh in, maybe, and Carrie can weigh in on that, maybe we can have some restriction to have it done in stages they can follow that in stages. I don't know if this have been done in the past or not. You could say, well, I mean, the first year you could do this, and maybe by the second year you have this deadline.
We usually do time of compliance.
So
So-
maybe that could be a way
Well,
to help out. I don't know.
The only problem is we don't have staged occupancy, so we don't really have a way of doing that other than to say you're in violation after a certain amount of time, and we'd really like to avoid doing a violation if we can just get everybody to come into a compliance right away.
But see, this is up to them. If they want to take this and don't do this right away, this is an option.
well,
No,
it's not really their option. We want things completed.
right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
Well, within the time of compliance of the permit.
And I think the issue that we have now is this has already been done, and now we're trying to bring it into compliance so that it is conforming with code so that we can give them the occupancy that they need. And we don't have another way of saying, well, you can do this in stages because, like I said, the work has already been done. What we're asking them for is to kind of revise it a little bit so that it does conform to code. So the paving is already done. But what we're saying is the paving in a certain spot for a parking stall, it doesn't meet the setback requirement, so we'd have to ask them to move that.
Okay.
The landscaping, it hasn't been done. We could work with them to find ways to make it efficient so that maybe it still meets the intent of the code, maybe not the letter, but we're missing, I think, the second part of the landscape plan, so I can't even provide a recommendation as to whether or not what they've presented would meet the code requirements or the intent of the code. So it's just, it's things like that. And
It's
we
little
don't-
things. It sounds like it's a little thing that can be corrected.
things that can be corrected, but we need to have the information in order to
Okay.
have it corrected.
So another question, is there someone from the city, like an inspector or someone who can meet with that owner and the attorney or whoever else on the site and can show them and point to them exactly what they need to do or what's wrong and what exactly
It's
they're
really just these 12 items.
But where exactly they can, so they understand, especially there's no architect, there's no plan, there's no measurements.
Well, we don't have any way of going around the life safety plan. That's not anything that we can grant variance for.
I was just gonna say, for the safety issue, if there is maybe from the fire chief, if you have any recommendation that you can pass along to them that they can use, maybe this is another way,
We've explored that, yeah.
no?
We've explored that with the fire chief. Yeah,
Oh,
he
he's
cannot
right
do that.
behind you.
No, that's
We continue to search.
Christine, I really appreciate you bringing that up because I understand that, this all, 1 through 12 need to be met, right? On a financial basis. There's no way I could do it right now. I could definitely do it over a period of time if there were some kind of guidelines that, we had to follow. I'm not opposed to doing it. I just can't afford to do it. And I understand that.
Again,
We
this
can
is
talk
not,
about
this
all
is
the time.
nothing we engineer here. This is usually done with staff. We don't like to do it on the floor because it gets messy. This isn't the proper forum to work these issues out. Proper forum is with our staff. So, just not here on the fly.
So the recommendation is, please have a meeting face-to-face with the team, and you will be able to work something out. It sounds from all what I heard here and the mayor and everyone else, there is a way. I know it doesn't sound like
Yeah.
it, but
No, she's right. I got a philosophy, we don't start at no. We can
Yeah.
wind up at no, but we make every effort not to.
yes.
And same's gonna apply to you. We're this far. It's not the end of the world.
We would welcome the meeting. So.
Yes.
Figure it out. So, okay, great.
Thank you.
Great. And just for the record, our fire staff, they do deal with a lot of dumpster fires. Believe me, the city sees a lot of dumpster fires. So, anyways, I have nothing further to say. The recommendation from staff is to hold. I think it's appropriate. And I'll look for a motion.
I ju-
To be determined. Carrie?
It would be more helpful to assign a date. I would recommend no less than 2 months.
Okay. Yeah, when's our planning meeting in Hang tight, folks.
Recommendation would be to hold to August 22nd.
Okay.
Makes a motion.
You got that one, Greg?
Sure. Lorick moves to hold item 8B till the Plan Commission meeting of August 22nd, 2000.
8C.
Apologies. Hold
Sure.
item 8C until the Plan Commission meeting of August 22nd, 2023.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Don.
Hold on the eye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, I.
Grillo, I.
Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Gavich, aye. Okay, guys, continue to work with staff and try to get through it. Item D, it's an official map amendment affecting the parcels at 237 East Ryan and part of the quarter of section 28. Statement. Anyways, Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request to amend the official map, so the future mapped roadways that affect the property at 237 and possibly one other property. The request is to eliminate the north-south leg as it affects the Hillside Coffee property, and you can see it's on the east side of their property. Staff is actually recommending that we eliminate the entire north-south leg that is continuing up from the property to the south as well. So on the screen right now, in red, that was the applicant's request because that pertains to their property specifically. Staff is recommending that we also include the part that is in black. If we don't eliminate the part that is in black, we have a remnant that really makes no logical sense. There's no connection point that it could possibly make unless it makes a hard left turn, a 90-degree angle to go back out to Ryan Road. It just doesn't make any logical sense to keep that. We've not heard from the property owner on that property, but we're not looking to change the east-west connection at this point. So if we do need to look at alternatives in the future for a connection to Ryan Road, we'll come up with that at such time as development is proposed. So with that, the recommendation is within a motion on the screen. The highlighted portion includes both of the affected parcels per staff's proposal. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Applicant want to make a statement before we go? Anybody? Oh, you can come up too, sir, if you'd like, and if you want to say something. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Robert Patterson, 9060 South Chicago Court, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, longtime Oak Creek resident. My wife, Rosemary, and I own the Hillside Coffee House. And while we got off to a very slow start because of COVID, our business has expanded greatly, and we need additional parking space. That's the long and short of it. So.
Yep, and I did speak to the applicant about this prior. They called and got a feel for it. So, gem of a business. It's doing well. Appreciate you here.
Thank you.
Christine, you want to start off?
No, I have no questions. No concerns.
Dawn?
We have a
Oh,
gentleman.
oh, I'm sorry. Come on up, sir. I apologize.
Ralph Petrosinski, the owner of the properties,
Whoop.
just,
Can you make sure you're on the mic?
I'm Ralph Petrosinski, the owner of the properties just west of 237. I own 211 and 225 East Ryan Road. I purchased two properties, 211 and 225 East Ryan Road, next to 237 in 1973, 50 years ago, with the concern that the R1 zone portion of my property could not become landlocked. The Oak Creek Long Range Planning Map assured this could not happen because it included a designated access road to East Ryan Road. I'm against removing this road from the planning map. The value and saleability of my property will be adversely affected. Without access to Ryan Road, my property would become landlocked and my R1 property would not have access to the turnaround on Ryan Road, which is just in front of 237 East Ryan. Eliminating the proposed road to my property would also have a negative impact on the total development of the whole southeast corner of Ryan Road and Howell Avenue, two state highways. as it may have to be used in the future for utility right-of-ways or alternate access for firefighting equipment.
Thank you.
I can put this in record.
Yeah, you can leave that with Carrie.
Sir, could I get you to just confirm if I am on the screen right now, can you see my cursor?
sorry,
Up on the big
Can you
screen on the,
Can you see my cursor moving right
up on
here?
that
Is there a
screen.
TV right here?
No, I don't see anybody.
You don't see it?
Down below, there's a
Oh,
screen.
okay, yes, okay, I'm sorry. Go
You
ahead.
see my cursor moving?
Yes, I see it.
Is that part of your property?
Yes, it is.
And then
That's,
this one too?
yes, that's 211, and that L-shaped property is 225.
Okay. You would still have access through this connection point, which would get you out through the neighborhood that does connect over to Howell Avenue through that portion to the west.
Well, if everything that was east of my property was ever developed, but I couldn't develop it before they did.
Correct, but you would not be able to actually have a road that went to Bryan Road without the Patterson property building their portion of the road, nor would you also, you would have to build this road too. The east-west would have to be connected as well.
Well, all I can see is that if you take out that road, my land is landlocked.
It wouldn't be, I mean, you would still have access.
But if I were to develop my land before the neighbors would, I couldn't develop it. They would have to develop at the same time or before I developed it.
Okay. Do you have access through this property right here?
I don't see your cursor.
See it here? This property?
That is my property.
That is your property?
That is my property.
Okay.
But you'd have access off the L-shaped property, correct? Is that 225?
Well, it appears to me that the access point currently for the driveway is on the developed lot next to the L-shaped property.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's possible that we could move the road connection here.
If I can inject something, that's zone B3.
Well, I don't have the zoning districts on here, but it is split zoned.
You see the front portion of my property is zone B3 and the back portion, the south portion is zoned R1.
I think your property is zoned, it doesn't really matter all that much. It is in a commercial district, it's in B4, and then the residential portion is in RS3.
The residential portions.
In
on
the
west
back.
side, or no, south side.
It's on the south side.
Is there a building in that little panhandle piece?
No, it's all open land.
Oh, that's all open.
So could you just shift the road over? Put it all the way through his property as
As
a
an
future
alternative?
road?
Because it's just a future road.
Mr. Petrzinski?
Yep.
Yep, he would have to agree to that.
Did you understand the question?
No, I know I'm.
What if that road were shifted westward and it goes north and south right through that panhandle?
Well, that there is also own a zone B3.
The zoning district would make no difference for the road connection, though.
But if I wanted to sell that property to somebody who wanted to develop it as R1, I wouldn't be able to without
Right.
them buying my B3.
You would just rezone. Because the road would be in the B4 district, technically. So if he wanted to develop the RS3, which is on the south end of it, it's just that panhandle that we've been calling it. And the B4, that's where the road would go. So if you put a residential neighborhood back there, I don't know how many homes you'd get back there. Say a cul-de-sac or something. Because you don't want to do the expense of the other one.
you see, without that access road, if somebody were to develop it as R1, like you said, I would have a dead-end road. I would have,
You'd possibly connect it to that proposed road on the south through the Panhandle. Because right now, if the Pattersons? Excuse me. They could just say, no, I don't want to do the road on their property, and you're stuck anyways, correct?
Without that road access,
Because they control the front end there. I mean, your only access was ever through that Panhandle, technically. Because you needed the other property owner to be okay with putting that road in, correct?
the way that the official map is laid out here would require multiple landowners to construct the road on their properties in order for everybody to have access.
Correct, even that person to the far east.
Correct. So everything on the east-west leg, all the landowners would have to construct their portion of the road, or you'd have to have a developer come in and assemble the properties in order to put in the road. But the two properties here for access would also have to construct the portion of the road for access in that location.
Correct.
I don't know what the width of this panhandle portion of the property is, the L-shaped portion. I don't know how wide that is. I don't know if there could be an agreement for a shared driveway access with the existing home. Those are development considerations for, a time when it would be developed.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not the road could shift there, it depends on, again, how wide it is.
But the way it stands now, if he were to develop or sell those two parcels he owns to develop,
Mhm.
they would need permission from the Hillside Coffee House land to build the road. They can't just put a road in.
That's correct.
As well as the house on the east.
And
You're actually better off on the west side. And again, I don't know the width of it, but what's a road? 24?
Typically, you need 60 feet minimum right away.
So probably, I don't know, I'm looking at a computer.
the other part is there could also be a consideration for a private road to go in.
Could we eliminate this road if that's what the commission votes on? And in the future, could he propose a new future road in that
Sure.
panhandle if he
And
sees
the
fit?
council also has an opportunity to review this. Well, they have to approve it before it moves forward. But if the council requires that there be an alternate location proposed, that could be part of it as well. But at this point, the road connection in that location is not viable.
Does that make sense to you, sir?
Okay, if you could say again, please. I'm sorry.
Sure. This also has to go to the Common Council. They have to approve it. As part of their review, they could require that an alternate location for that future roadway connection be part of their approval. But somebody would have to present that to them for them to consider. But at this point, keeping this roadway connection in this location does not appear to be viable.
I think you're right. It's not viable. I purchased it 50 years ago, being assured that that road would go through.
No. They're proposed. I don't think there's an insurance.
No,
They would have
no,
built
no,
it. If the need was there, they would have built it. So I'm not saying there isn't a need in the future, but until somebody puts in those roadways on the south, there's no need for that dead end road.
Well, if that happens, then possibly in the future they could, put the parking lot in.
Well, they own their land, so they do have the right to petition to get rid of that road because they have no intent of ever allowing that road in, at least by the looks of what they're doing. Or they go out of business and the parking lot becomes road one day. I think you're better off on the west side than you are on the east side of the property to access it. That's just me. Because you take up the same amount of land by the eye. Might be a little wider on the east side.
You see, what that road also does is it would give access to the Rhine Road turnaround. That's just in front of 237.
No.
So if that,
Way would.
so if that whole corner was developed business, that would definitely be an asset to the corner.
Carrie, can I ask you a question, just to help him understand? So right now, where the existing road is, where your cursor is, even without this staff addition, I mean, they're already using that. They would have to approve that to become a road in the first place, correct? I mean, so the probability of that ever becoming a road is very, very low, even if we didn't change the map.
Yeah.
So it either gets eliminated or moved. Either way, you can't force them to keep it that way, and force a road in there when they're running a business or it's just their land.
Well, there's got to be a reason why that was put into the planning map.
Well, those are all over the city, and they're just fantasy roads, right? And we change them all the time.
Sure.
At the time they came up with something, that's what they saw at the time. That was their vision, but that was 50 years ago.
Yeah. At the time, probably the only thing there was Hillside, blacksmith shop. So, I mean, the house to the east probably didn't exist.
I mean, technically, the L-shaped parcel does have access, quote unquote, to Ryan because it has frontage.
Correct.
Whether or not it can have an access that can support multiple houses or just one, at this point, I can't make that determination. And there is kind of an interesting situation with the existing curb cut there. Ryan Road is the jurisdiction of WISDOT, so they would have to take a look at that. But there's nothing saying that WISDOT would necessarily prohibit the shared curb cut and then a split driveway to access the rear of that property. But this is all conjecture.
Yes.
This is all speculative. There is an alternative that we could consider if it moves forward to council.
So, I think Carrie summed it up. Don reiterated it. Even with Hillside's parking lot, what they're proposing in the elimination of that road, they never have to allow that road anytime, even if they weren't putting in the parking lot. Nor does the applicant, the person living to the east of Hillside.
You see, but the road would enhance the value of my property. Is that correct or not?
I can't really say that. Not really, because you don't have a guaranteed access to Ryan. Right now, your guaranteed access to Ryan is on the west. So in my opinion, you're better off with what you control than what you don't. Because you really don't control that front half to Ryan.
No.
That's why I think
No,
you're
but
better off searching for alternatives for a shared drive and a road on the Panhandle or the west side. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm also giving you the opinion of some of the brokers I've had listing the property.
I can appreciate that, sir. But that road was never a guarantee. I mean,
No.
Whoever told you that 50 years
no.
ago, you may want to dial him up and get hold of him. I can't help you with that one. But again, I do think, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. I think you have a better chance getting total access off Ryan Road on the west portion than you ever would on the east. I can't imagine the applicant living to the east of Hillside going, put a road in there.
But like I say, right now, that property is owned B3 in the front portion and R1 in the back portion. How could that R1 portion be developed?
You could develop it because you'd bring the road down that panhandle and the zoning would make no difference. Am I correct in that, Carrie?
So the only difference that it would make is if you were trying to do a multiple zoning district development. In other words, if you wanted to put a business in the B4 portion and you wanted to put a residence in the RS3 portion, that might change the access in terms of width or requirements, but you would still have the ability to access that property from Ryan Road, and my guess would be it would be a shared access. The zoning district in and of itself does not eliminate the possibility of developing in either district.
Correct.
So, meaning you could have a road, you could have a driveway. The zoning district really just kind of determines what your maximums are. So for a commercial property, there is a minimum width, and for a residential property, there's a minimum and a maximum width for each type of access point. But if you're just going to develop in the rear portion as a residential property, it makes no difference. Now, the rub to that, of course, is the east-west portion. We'd have to consider that as being a road constructed. So I'm not showing the zoning districts on here, but the zoning district line effectively comes right about here.
Yeah. Just
So-
that panhandle.
Just the panhandle part is in the B4 district. The rest of it is all residential. I would say that a shared access point to be able to develop this part here,
Be your best bet
that would still allow for a development there.
because you control it.
I would guess that WISDOT would require that to be a shared curb cut, though, with a driveway that comes off of it, and then you can access back here. But just this being in the B4 district does not prohibit the development back here.
But even without that road, it can still be developed with the other future road off of South Burrell and East Larson, correct?
If those other property owners put in that access. That's kind of the rub back here, is when you have an official road pattern that affects multiple properties, it almost ends up being piecemeal unless somebody assembles all of them in order to develop. Because it is on the property owner or the developer to put in that roadway.
Well, and if a developer does do that, I mean, speaking as a homeowner, I would much rather live on a back road of a neighborhood than be connected to Ryan Road and live right off of it.
But there would still be access because the frontage is off of Ryan. There currently is frontage on Ryan, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, correct. And again, it's just my opinion. You control that west portion. Don't control the east portion where Hillside is or the neighbor to the east. I would hitch my horses to the west side and hope to develop and access that way.
Yeah, it's not a landlocked parcel. If you wanted to divide it, that would be the
Landlocked.
part that would cause it to be landlocked.
If you sold off the B4 portion, that would be landlocked.
But it wouldn't meet our
Well-
standards in order to divide it in this way anyway.
I don't have it sold at this point, no, but maybe if you all took a look at the whole corner, could you take a look at the whole corner just, rather than just,
Well, we really have to kind of stick to the agenda item, but we realize, the comprehensive plan does go to the corner. We get that. But we got to kind of stick to the agenda item.
sure.
Mayor, I'd like
Yes.
to call the question.
Okay. Commissioners, question's been called. We're going to end the discussion right here. I'll give you a last word on anything. Ashley, anything?
No, nothing.
Dawn,
Thank
did
you.
I cut you off? Did I ever let you finish?
I'm fine.
Greg? Don?
I have nothing.
Fred?
No, we just can't solve the problem tonight.
No.
So
Chauncey?
I do have a question for Carrie. Carrie, in that picture, you were showing what was suggested staff's recommendation, that addition, is that part of this? The suggested motion? Are we looking at the part that's black and red, or just the red? Both?
Okay, I have a hard time hearing you, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
So the proposal is in red, staff's addition is in black. Plan Commission has the opportunity to determine whether or not they want to go with the applicant's request or staff's addition. If it's staff's addition, you would eliminate the property at 220. If you don't want to include the staff addition, you would eliminate 225 and limit it just to 237.
Thank you.
Okay, is that clear? So staff addition affects Rouse property, red is Hillsides. So if you just want to change it, he can keep the road, but he's got to wait for that future development. And then it'll be a dead end. With that, we'll call for a motion.
Seifert moves that the planning commission recommends to the common council that the official map for the portion of the mapped unimprovement future right-of-way affecting the property at 225 and 237 East Ryan Road be amended as presented after a public hearing.
Lorik seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Fred.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, I.
Grillo, aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Okay.
There will be an opportunity at the Common Council for you to also present your information. That hearing date has not been set yet, but as an abutting property owner, you will get notice in the mail.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Tom.
it, folks. Thanks for your patience. 8E, Master Sign Plan Amendment. An amendment, a proposed amendment to an existing master sign plan for Guardian Credit Union, a multi-tenant commercial building on the property 8701 South Howell Avenue. Good evening. Carrie, you go, oh, I'm sorry. Sylvia, my one shot and I blew it.
No worries.
All right.
This is a proposed master sign amendment for Guardian Credit Union. Their current zoning is B2. The request is to update the entire master sign plan. I'll go through what they're proposing, but just kind of a quick rundown is a new wall sign on the south elevation, updating the wall sign on the east elevation, and they will be updating the monument sign as well. So this is an overview of the signs that are included in the proposed master sign plan. I've circled in red the ones that are being proposed to change in this plan, and I'll go through these. Starting with the south elevation, we have some differences here between what was originally approved in the 2007 master sign plan and what ended up being installed. In the 2007 master sign plan, they had proposed this Guardian Credit Union sign on the south elevation of the building. This sign ended up being installed on the east elevation, as we'll see in a couple slides, instead of this location. In 2021, there was an application for this tenant sign shown here that was approved by staff. At that time, what should have happened was an amendment to the master sign plan that we're doing now, but it was approved in error. What they're proposing on the south elevation is an additional wall sign over the ATM canopy for Guardian Credit Union. The size matches the existing tenant sign on that elevation. And then going to the east elevation, as I mentioned on the previous slide, in the original 2007 master sign plan, they had originally proposed a sign for Guardian Credit Union on this elevation, but removed that request prior to going to Plan Commission. So that was not included in the approval. but it was installed instead of the approved sign on the south elevation. So current signage looks like this. Not extremely relevant tonight, but just to mention, there are the logo signs on each side of this pillar feature. Those received a variance in 2007, right around the same time that the master sign plan was approved. And then what they are proposing for the east elevation is an update to that sign. It will match the size of the two signs on the south elevation, and as shown. The monument sign, the update that they're proposing is compliant with the master sign plan. Just showing this, staff has no concerns about the dimension. They're updating a out of compliance movable text sign with a compliant electronic sign. And with that, I have a suggested motion. And back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Sylvia. Appreciate that. Who wants to go first? Christine?
That's good because I have no questions. Looks good to me.
Dawn?
So when they put the Martin Law offices in, did that come to us for approval? No. Okay. That looks big.
It does look big, if you don't mind my saying.
I'll need your name and address, sir.
So my name is Kevin Correa. I am the Chief Administrative Officer of Guardian Credit Union, representing them. Our location is on 7801 South Howell.
Yeah, you may as well. You can pull that thing down.
Should be used to this by now. My name is Reggie. I am representing Guardian Credit Union with Lemberg. We are their preferred sign contractor. We are requesting approval tonight of the master sign plan as proposed. Since 2007, when the original was approved, South Howell and West Drexel has gotten much busier. They would like to have the logo offset on the upper corner to kind of set them apart from Martin Law offices. We understand that Martin Law offices was approved in error, but as the owners of the building and the managers of the property, we feel that they should have a little more visibility on the wall than one of their tenants. I feel that it is worth noting in the 2007 plan, there was some allowance for some additional tenant signage. That will not be included in this new master sign plan as they're included on the monument signs, therefore would not need to be approved for walls.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dawn.
I do. Okay, so the idea is that you want new signage so that it matches Martin a little bit more?
Correct. They are doing a rebrand, so they're updating their signage and adding a sign on that south elevation. They would like to match the size of the Martin Law Firm, as they are the main tenant in the building.
Okay, and then on the top of the windows in page 5, it says savings checking. Is that included in the sign? Really, we usually do have that, right?
The window vinyls, as of now, are not included in the master sign plan, but they absolutely could be if we submit a revision.
Is that something that we?
Yes, I would recommend that being included in the revision. Okay. And we can add that as a condition.
I think that's all I have.
Okay. Ashley?
Nothing from engineering, thank you.
Greg?
As far as the monument sign, I really like the upgrade to the monument sign and the new look of it. I'm fine with adding the sign on the east elevation facing Howell. I understand Guardian Credit Union owns the building, is that correct? I'm not a designer or a sign person. I don't necessarily like the look of the eagle in the corner, but then the M for Martin Law office is not in the corner. I like it symmetrical and matching, but I understand that you want to stand out from other tenants.
That is correct. I feel the same way about the prominence of the sign. That's kind of at the issue with the eagle logo in the corner.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, I guess I really have no issues with it. So, no other questions.
Okay, thank you. Don?
No questions right now.
Fred?
I have a question for Carrie. On any business, we're allowed only one monument sign, correct? That you can only have one sign, mounted sign per company, correct?
For the monument sign or for the wall
Monument
sign?
sign for a business.
It's one per street frontage.
Street?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was just one sign per, okay. Because they do have two signs for that facility.
That is correct. Those signs are both existing and included on the sign
They have
plan.
2 access points.
They have two access, okay. That's it.
Okay. Jossie? Working?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. I agree, Guardian, should have prominence. Don't have a problem with that new view is at the east. Eagle's your choice, without a doubt. Monument sign, I agree with Greg. Good update. Takes it from grade school to college right there. That's a couple level jump there. As far as the south side goes, the Martin Law Office, that's the proposed addition, correct?
The Martin Law Office sign is existing. That was permitted by staff in 2021. What should have happened was at that time, they should have come in for a master sign amendment, but it was approved in error.
Yeah, it's a messy looking sign. Where it says injury attorneys. Not much. But anyways, I'm okay with Guardian with the Eagle where it's at. If that's what you like, I'm okay with it. What else do we have? Just wayfinding signs,
Yes, the rest are just directional
which is
signs.
completely understandable given that property and the changes that went on with DOT to do that shared driveway to get into your neighbor to the south tends to get kind of busy. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, seeing none, motion.
Lorik moves to approve the amendment to the master sign plan submitted by Guardian Credit Union for the multi-tenant commercial building on the property located at 7801 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that plans are revised to show logos in line with text on all wall signs. 3, that permits are revised for signs prior to installation. 4, that all detailed, revised, and finalized plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
And I just wanted to clarify if the commission would like to add the conditions suggested by Commissioner Carrillo. We could say that signs are revised to show window signs on the east elevation, and add that as a condition as well. And if several commissioners have mentioned having the Eagle logo in line with the text is something that they would be comfortable with being at the discretion of the applicant. If that's the case, then you would want to remove condition number 2 from the suggested motion.
Okay. I will amend the motion as stated.
Oldani seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Jossie.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Kipchinsky, aye.
Lorik, aye.
Gavich, aye.
Oldani, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Good luck to you.
Good
Thank
evening.
you. Next, we have zoning text amendments, and boy, I am not going to read all this. But basically, they come out of table 17.0304, and there's multiple ones listed here. Also 17.0411, 17.100 or 1001. and
We've got a bunch.
you got it. You got it. So I'm going to hand it over to Carrie and Sylvia for this.
Yep, we're probably going to go back and forth a little bit on this, but we're going to go in order of how it appears in the zoning code with the exception of definitions. So hopefully you can follow us. Essentially, what we're doing here is amending a couple of things, relatively minor, but things that have come up in the course of administering the code, applying it, and seeing what permits are now coming in that are a little bit different and unique from what we had seen whenever we adopted the new code. So first is an update to the use tables. This affects both the residential and the non-residential districts. Essentially, what we were looking at tonight for one of the conditional use permits, solar energy collection systems, roof-mounted systems were proposing to be permitted in all districts, regardless of whether they're residential or non-residential. Alternative energy sources are things that we want to promote in the city. So it just made sense that if it's compliant with all the other requirements of code, there should be no reason to get a conditional use permit for roof-mounted. Alternatively, ground-mounted systems, we are recommending being conditional just so that we can ensure that all of the requirements for access, for setbacks, for any screening that may be necessary, if it even is necessary, meet the conditional use requirements. That may be amended in the future if it turns out that the ground-mounted systems are advancing in such a way that we no longer have those concerns. But as of right now, we are recommending that they be conditional uses in all districts. So it's an update to the non-residential section of the table. We actually had it backwards, where they were permitted and they should have been conditional. Are there any questions with roof or ground-mounted solar energy collection systems?
I actually do kind of a question or a concern. Have we investigated how safe they are from like a fire standpoint, especially like the roof? Sometimes it's like wood, and if they are overheated, or what kind of a safety concerns that others have been experiencing in other municipalities?
They actually go off the National Electrical Code, and then also fire rating standards. So the wires rated. They're engineered, and they're not made of wood. They're all metal systems as well.
Yeah, the reason why I'm asking this, I have some friends, I'm going to call them friends, they live in Brookfield, and they have one of those and actually burned down part of the house before they caught it. So there are some hazards that did happen. I'm not saying it's the same thing here, but I'm asking, has this been investigated by the fire chief? Or even though I saw the gentleman with that stickers that showed that it has been approved and everything, I just want to make sure if we have an inspection, something from that sort.
Well, we do. Okay. I mean, there are residential units here in the city that have gone in, and just like anything, and we dealt with this a lot, they pull the permit first and they put their engineering specs in. They're approved by the electrical inspector, and then the installation goes in and then he checks it for proper installation. Can't really speculate on why your poor friends in Brookfield went up in flames, but that's typically how it works. Actually, most people don't know this. For quite a while, we had the largest solar array in the state at IKEA.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can't even see
It's been
them.
eclipsed a few times over, but it might be commercially. But there's some bigger ones throughout the state.
Yeah, their entire roof is covered in them.
So, out of curiosity, how much money do they save on electricity bills?
I couldn't tell you that. I have no
Well,
idea.
They engineer it to see what the payback would be, and
It's gone up. You do get more of an ROI on them now.
yeah, the panels have gone down, and it's there. People wouldn't do it.
Commercial, I
Geez.
think, is probably you get more of a quicker return, but I think residential, they're trying to get below 10 years.
Believe it or not, like parking lot lights, I was just in a meeting the other day, and a large complex did it. The payback was 2 years on energy, on installation costs, going from high pressure, I think they were sodiums, to LED. 2 years. So, it's coming.
Any more questions on solars?
I do have one question. And I am not familiar with solars at all. My question is based on those first two bullets. So the first bullet, roof mounted, permitted in all districts. Should the second bullet contain conditional use for non-residential and residential?
It's already conditional in residential.
Oh,
We're
it
only
is.
changing it
She's
for
talking about
non-residential.
ground mounted in
Yeah.
residential districts.
Yeah, we already have that as conditional. The
Oh,
only thing
okay.
that we're updating is the non-residential portion.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on solar? Okay. So garden plots for rent we have as being a request actually from Milwaukee County to allow garden plots for rent as conditional uses in the P1 Park District. This is something that we feel in certain locations may be an advantageous thing for the neighborhood. It allows for UW Extension, for example, to have a neighborhood residential garden plot on their properties. But we also wanted to make sure that we are addressing such things as access, parking, setbacks, things like that, making sure it's all good to go. So we are recommending that they be conditional uses in the P1 Park District.
Do garden plots encompass hoop houses? Like, temporary greenhouse where they were composting and doing all that cool stuff in the winter.
Because it's a conditional use situation, you would have the authority to control that. Yep. You would have control through the conditional use permit. Any questions?
And that's any park, city or county.
But it would still, yes, P1 Park District, but it would all be a conditional use. On county-owned property, yes. Yeah, they would have to maintain their garden plots.
Oak Creek Parkway, Falk Park.
Yeah, some of this came around because they wanted to they presented this at a neighborhood meeting in a specific park. They got feedback from the neighborhood, they're not moving forward with it there, but they do want to see if they have the opportunity to put it in another park where it would be supported by the community, by the neighborhood. They wanted to have that option available to the residents and to some of their master gardeners, for instance. It wouldn't take over the whole park. It's not like they're covering the entire parcel with these things either, so.
City of Milwaukee
Yeah.
has some plots over in the Garden District on Howard and 6th Street.
Yep.
Very popular. And I have had some residents ask for things like this. So I can see the request.
The contextual situation, how it affects the rest of the neighborhood or fits in with the rest of the neighborhood is why we're recommending it as a conditional use. Okay. As far as manufacturing artisan is concerned, we have three kind of levels of manufacturing. Artisan manufacturing is your typical, I make jewelry, I make candles,